Hey everyone, it's Christian, your Vancouver Realtor. And what I want to talk to you today about is the BC Housing Minister David Eby and a conference that I was part of where I sat in on a live chat with him and got to listen in like a fly on the wall to the policies, the proposals, the initiatives the BC government has to address the lack of housing options and the affordability concerns that we are facing here in the province. And so I have taken notes assiduously, and I thought there was some points in this talk that were quite interesting, and I wanted to share them with you because you, dear citizen of British Columbia, you need to be informed. You want to know what your government's doing to make things better, make more options, home options available for all of us. So let's jump in. And if you enjoy the content, give us a like, subscribe. We love having you. Now, very first thing he started off with, which I was impressed with, is he said that in 2021, 100,000 people moved into British Columbia. Wham! That's just like getting slapped in the face right there. That's a lot of migration and immigration into BC. Now, we are not building enough homes to accommodate all these people. In fact, we only average about 20 to 25,000 housing starts. Housing starts is just a fancy way of saying new homes being brought to market. So you imagine that. You've got 4 people moving to the province for every 1 new home being built. Well, obviously that's going to cause a big issue. At some point, it's going to push the rents really high, and it's going to push prices even higher. And that's exactly what's happening. Before he got into his ideas, Eby was saying that in addition to all these people coming, we're starting to see international students back. We see contract workers back in Vancouver. And that is true because the borders have opened. I also hear international students on the street. I see them in groups of 5 and 10 on Robson Street when I pass by. So they are back. And what that means is that they will then need rental units as well because they have to stay somewhere. And so that means there's less rental units available for the rest of local Vancouverites. And of course, it just pushes prices higher. So what are they going to do about it? What are the plans? So he focused on 3 things: supply, demand, and partnerships. And I want to talk to you mostly about supply because that's where he spent most of his time. Interestingly, the NDP has finally come around to accepting that supply is the big issue here. And so this is where they are focusing a lot of their efforts. Some of the things he said were that they wanted to speed up the approvals process, that it was taking too long for developers to approach the city, submit their proposal, go through 1, 2, 3 or more rounds of public consultation, and finally get a tower approved and built. I mean, it can take years. Years. I had one developer once say to me, a VP of sales, who said to me out of a very big company, Christian, it took the United States less time to announce and put a man on the moon than it took us to get this tower approved and built. So that's just one analogy. So they want to get supply out faster. And what Eby said was they may look at legislation that pushes or promotes any projects that are compliant to the OCP. So the OCP is the official community plan. It says, how big you can build towers here on Jones Street and how big they can be on Smith Street, and et cetera, et cetera. And if a proposal is in line with the official community plan, there should be a faster, streamlined process to get those towers approved and built, or get that housing approved and built, because it may be a townhouse community that we're talking about. So that is one sort of angle of attack for the government, and it makes a lot of sense. And he did come around and say that, look, it doesn't really matter how the local municipalities handle this. If they want to have several consultations, fine. If they want to sit through the middle of the night on public consultations, they're welcome to do that, as long as certain targets are met and that the municipalities, whether it's Port Moody, Burnaby, Vancouver, or what have you, build the required units. So, and I think that's a really good point. I think it would really help get a lot of housing supply onto the market. Now, point number 2 was the focus on demand. You know, and he sort of reiterated that the taxes that they had brought in. And now he's referring to, one, the foreign buyer tax, 15% to 20%, which they increased. They didn't bring it in. That was the Liberal government of Christy Clark that brought that in the summer of 2016. And the empty homes tax in Vancouver, then the BC version of that called the spec tax, that these have helped bring 18,000 empty homes back onto the market, so as rental units. I don't know if that's a fact. I would be interested to know where they get those precise numbers from. 18,000 units sounds like a lot of units. I know there was all these urban myths that if you were driving down Georgia and Cole Harbor, you would see all these empty condos. They were all bought by foreign investors. Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, I live in the area and I jog a lot along there, and it is a very busy area. There is a lot of those units are occupied. I don't know that they ever added 18,000 units of rental supply to the market. Well, that's what he says. The third area he focused on is partnerships. And with regards to partnerships, he said that the BC government was lending out money. So they have this sort of pool of a couple of $1 billion, which they lend to developers who then go and build their project and then, of course, repay that money to the government, and the government then loans it out to somebody else. I haven't followed this program, so I can't speak to how many units it's brought to market. Eby said that they've brought 13,000 units. Now, he didn't specify whether that means that they've built 13,000 or that they've approved 13,000 through this government program. I mean, that I would have to say, though, that that's disappointing if you put it in a bigger context, a bigger picture, because 13,000 units in the 5 years that they've been in government is about 2,500 units a year that I don't even think that are on the market yet. And if you take that based on the numbers that we need, it would represent less than 10% of the sort of 35,000 units that we need being built every year. So it's not a big number. And wherever you have the government getting involved, it just seems to take a lot longer, doesn't it? So it would be better if they found a way to just let the private companies do this. I think it'll be more effective and more efficient. So that was his comment there. He did mention touch on a few other things. One was the cooling off measure. He doesn't even think it's going to have any impact on home prices, and he flat out said so. He said it's more of a consumer protection issue, and that's the way he sort of couched it, which makes sense. We certainly want consumers to be protected. We want home buyers to be able to have enough time to get an inspection done on a place that they're buying, especially when they're buying something for $2 million. So that is the 7-day cooling off period. But yeah, he dismissed any notion that this would have any impact on prices, which is kind of the way it's been painted in the mainstream media as a cooling measure. It's not a cooling measure. It's a cooling off period that's a consumer protection issue. And finally, there was some discussion on the requirements to build more density, especially to build it around transit nodes or hubs like Metrotown, or we see in New Westminster or King George in Surrey, wherever you have a SkyTrain, you want to have a lot of density, you want to have towers, because people living there, it increases their livability. They can walk to the train station. It takes cars off the road, cleaner air, less noise pollution. And so there's a real focus of doing that on the part of the government. So if you've got comments, questions, or what do you think about the current government's approach to housing, affordability, and consumer protection? Whatever you have to say, leave those in the comments below. Subscribe, like, and we'll see you next time.